Welcome to with AuDHD SAS Amanda Jayne Thrives. Today on the video, the podcast, we are going to be talking about AuDHD wellbeing strategy from my perspective, on Stimmy walks and whimsical thoughts. Now, I'm just going to double this up. Hold on. So yeah, I'm just fresh back off my walk, my Stimmy walk. Um, my energy this week after setting up my in-person classes. So I started teaching in-person classes, exercise classes from for the first time in 6 years, so like a long time. And the 2 month build up to that was like intense. It was a lot of stuff to kind of organize and get ready and redo my first aid, to get the insurance, get the classes planned. And then of course, like the uncertainty and the nerves of like, teaching in a new space, meeting new people. And I don't think you really notice how overwhelming it is until you get into it and you're like, whoa, that's a lot of stuff. So I posted on my Instagram stories about how I'd loved doing the classes, but I'd cried before the class and I cried loads after the class, not when I was there. But then I took it down because it was written really like, sometimes when you have a thought and then you're like, yeah, this makes total sense. And you write it down and you're like, oh, wait, that just looks like it doesn't make sense. I'll do it later. So took that down. But I think that's it. Like, there's so much when you're coming online and you're, building things, sharing things. It's turning around now, but there's this like, this feeling of this need for everything to be like really perfect and really polished and showing all the sort of like the positive, exciting parts and not going, well, actually, the overwhelm was immense and I cried my eyes out, or didn't realize how much I was kind of like holding on to get to the finish line. And then loads of emotion. I feel maybe not everyone, but like lots of people I imagine get that. I even get that if I was running races. So things like even when I did like my first couch to 5K, and then when I did both of the half marathons that I did in London, I remember getting to the end and you know, just crying at the end. I don't know, maybe I'm just like a really emotional person, but I think when been building up to like an event, it can be yeah, yeah, really intense. So the last couple of days, I've just really let myself just ground and rest and relax. And yeah, just let myself land. Yeah, because I was even more overwhelmed than I kind of like expected to be almost. So I'd planned out for the week to be really low demand, to make space for whatever sort of energetic crash, if you like, was going to be in that week after the setup. Because now, of course, I've taught my first ones. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, that's cool. Can, we can do this, great, because it's removed that sort of like uncertainty in that build up. But as I was saying in the video yesterday, so I was talking about starting where you are with what you've got. Um, you know, long background working within the fitness industry, started first in 2008. But, I've been training in different capacities ever since I was like 4, I guess. I started ballet. I did that for like 11 years. But a lot of my personal relationship with exercise came from walking a lot. I walked a lot. And one of the things that I do quite a lot when I'm teaching my courses or I'm working with people is looking at the things that brought you joy when you were growing up and seeing if that's something that um, can connect back with, because it's amazing for me personally, at least, how many of the things that I found joy in while I was growing up um, are the things that bring me joy, peace, calm, and ability to process things as well now. Um, so yeah, so for me, Stimmy walks are like a major part of my personal well-being strategy. I think walking is so sort of like underestimated um in just how powerful that is. I think sometimes when we think of exercise, when we think of movement, there's that thought that it has to be almost like an event. It has to be something that is really either intense or has a set destination or yeah, something like that, when in reality, walking is phenomenal. Walking is one of my absolute favorite ways to get movement um in teaching the in-person classes, I've launched them in such a way where I'm aligning with my own energy and the energy that I knew I was going to have available. From having built, my website and doing all these things that took a lot of spoons. Coming into the new year and teaching really intense exercise was just not going to be something I was going to want to do personally. And I felt that, there's a need for the sort of lower to the ground, slower, more intentional movement that focuses on how you're moving. Um, so that's what I've been teaching. But it's not that I don't love intense exercise. And I think this is where it's really cool to sort of look at all the different ways and look at how movement and even things like planning, like, food or other lifestyle aspects. It's really, really, really cool when you can get in and go, okay, so what do I need? What do I enjoy? What are my sensory, like, what are my oversensitivities, undersensitivities, and how can I work with them instead of against them? And how can I let it be flexible with the energy that I have available to me at any one time, understanding that that can change. So, you know, uh, I find like the energy I have available can shift, without any sort of I don't know, like warning. So the way that I have built everything has been rooted in self-discovery and kind of like journaling processes of looking at, what do I want to do? What do I ideally like really want to do? What would my ideal lifestyle and routine look like? And how can I reverse engineer that to fit who I am, what I want, what I need? um, whilst taking into account there's going to be days where I've got all of the motivation and energy and drive to do all the things. And there are going to be days when there's nothing. And making peace with that, making friends with that, finding the brilliance and the benefit that comes with both ends of that spectrum, because you're going to have everything in between as well. So for me, I liken it to probably like, I grew up near Aberdeen. So I think of it like an oil rig, almost like a floating structure. You need structure there. You need something that is tangible and can be predictable, but that also moves with, the elements. Yeah, like, your energy. Life is always going to be throwing different curveballs. There's always going to be changes in plans. How can I build something that helps me to feel supported, but has wiggle room, has capacity to change and shift depending on what spoons I have available? And it's not infallible. Like, one of my favorite programs I created was Plan Shop Prep, which was around planning and prepping food, because I used to be a bodybuilder. So I developed a lot of skills there. But it's different now because I'm not someone that calorie counts or is like weighing my food or myself or having strict set plans, but being able to create batches of things or have things available to me that I don't have to think about is really, really useful. So I have things where, I've got loads of spoons, loads of energy, and I'll build something. You know, I tend to eat relatively the same thing for months on end, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh no, I can't eat that anymore. It's, because I've got like sensory overload with it. Um, but what I'll do is I'll make hay while the sun shines, in a sense. So when I've got that energy, that drive to do that, I'll make more so that I can fire stuff into the freezer or have things that are non-perishables that are available to me for the times where my time is more stretched or my spoons are just non-existent and I need to be, and even sometimes I find my signals of my hunger are sort of like compromised. I need something where I don't need to think too much. So it's the same with the movement. It's thinking about, okay, in January, this is where a lot of the programming, the things that are, out there that we're consuming online and stuff is sort of more geared to like go, 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 go. And, it's not something that's sustainable. I covered that a little bit yesterday in the video I did there. Um, for me personally, like I need to move. Even if I am really exhausted, there's usually some sort of energy that I need to physically discharge. So I found ways to kind of do it in such a way where I can um do intense things if I want to, but if I don't have that available to me, and my things that I'm gonna do, I always have something else. So I'll always have something like yoga or again, just going for a walk. Going for a walk is like it's like my thing. And when I say I go on a stimmy walk, I'm not like power walking or well, sometimes I am, depending on what the music is or whatever. But for today, for example, I think I went for about 2.5 hours, just moving about, and that's where the name of this video came from. It was, it was a really stimmy walk, and I've been finding myself sort of in my thoughts because not only have I launched the in-person classes, but of course I've just built all this, online stuff and working out, how I'm going to set up systems and things like that to get that going. And it can be really tempting to feel like, oh, I've got so much stuff to do. So I'm just going to sit in front of the computer or I'm just going to sit and think about it over and over again and then push back the things that bring joy or, which for me is movement and getting out, is one of them. So I was really intentional about making sure today was about no protecting that time where I create space to do what it is that I want to do, to get myself out of forcing myself to sit down and get stuff done, knowing that when I go on what I'm calling my stimmy walk is when my ideas and things are going to naturally flow. They're going to flow better. I'm going to have access to the thoughts of the things that I actually want to do. Um, the opportunities that I want to go for, the connections I want to make, how I'll ideally approach things in my business. So again, for me personally, that's kind of what it's going to look like better than if I sit and do it. So that's where it kind of ties into the whimsical thoughts, is it allows me to really drop into that flow state. It's kind of like, when people say about, they get their best ideas in the shower, or swimming is another one, because it's, it's not for everyone, but for me, that's another really sensory experience doing swimming, particularly the coordination of the breath and things like that. I like to be underwater. But walking does it too. And this also ties a little bit into, so another title I was going to have for this video, for this slash podcast, because it repurposes into my podcast, is the other name was going to be, forget exercise and food. What about like your creativity? Obviously not as shit a name as that, but I like that kind of sentiment. One of the parallels that I noticed quite a lot when I was doing personal training was a lot of my clients had quite high pressure jobs, but they were also either um athletes in their spare time, not their spare time, like that was still really important, or creatives, or both. And I think it's that, like I was saying yesterday, creating that tangible way of understanding something else that you're doing. So for me, in the video yesterday, I was talking about how exercise was a way for me creating something tangible to understand the healing process I was going through with trauma before I knew what I was doing. And now that looks like when I taught myself to DJ, and I'm doing a lot of stuff with like, DJing, and going to be moving into sort of playing with like the production and stuff like that. That helps me to understand um the balancing of things in exercise, I guess, as well, but also in business, and how you're managing two different things. So I was talking to a friend earlier on who's also autistic and ADHD, and she'd said something about how she needs to have at least two projects going on at the same time. And I was like, yeah, like same. I need that, because otherwise my attention is so focused. I get overwhelmed and I can't really do anything. I need to be able to move between two projects. I used to call it my thermostat. So, I'd be working on one thing and getting it to a level where either I was starting to get overwhelmed or bored, and then have this other one that could, move in. And it was sort of like moving between the two. So you were always progressing, but not hyper focusing on this one thing. So for me, that's kind of what DJing is like. It's you're working with two different tracks and having to sort of think about how they're going to go together, and how to make it work, because it's so easy to, um, I think if you can naturally do something relatively well, it's really one thing that I noticed while I've been doing the DJing is that I'll sort of be like, oh, it must be really easy because I can just do it. And then I'll switch into a genre type that isn't my typical type, and I like can't get it. And I'm like, oh, it's not that it's like just really easy. It's just there's some things that have a natural fit and a natural flow. So it's going to be the same with your exercise, your lifestyle planning, your food, all of this kind of stuff that falls under the umbrella of well-being. It's really, really tempting because of the messaging that is kind of out there, sort of like, fitness and well-being stuff, that it has to be a really concerted effort, something that you have to really think about and put yourself into it, which can sometimes prevent you from just doing it, and just doing something that maybe just comes really, really naturally and really easy, easy to you, something that's just enjoyable. And I think when you're autistic and ADHD, um, you can really, really benefit from taking that piece of resistance out, of making it this big thing, this event, and thinking, what comes naturally to me, what's something that I genuinely enjoy, and how can I start small and build from there, and not always plan it in. It depends on how you are and where you sit. with the sort of demand avoidance sort of piece. Like for me, I can't have too many things that are set in stone, locked into a routine, because it just triggers that demand avoidance overwhelm, and I don't want to do anything because there's been too much thought gone into it. And this is coming from me as someone who like loves movement, loves exercise. Um, but I've recently, in the last couple of years, had to kind of start untangling things that were kind of projected onto me relative to how, easy it is for me, in terms of like, I naturally love it, so I want to do it. And that meaning that I don't need support. That's kind of the things that were happening. So I've had to then sort of take it back from a place where maybe I did have lots of things planned in, and it started to feel almost like, I don't want to say unsafe, but in a sense, I guess it did, because it was like, oh, yeah, I don't even know. That's probably a different video for a different day, but I had to strip it back and do things before I was ready. So instead of, if I knew, how do I put this? So I knew that I wanted to be able to develop my body weight strength again, for example, or my cardiovascular fitness, because I love spinning, I love running. And again, I talked about that a little bit yesterday, about the build and the drop in terms of your cardiovascular fitness and how quick it is. Um, so what I would do was sort of have in my mind, okay, I want to be able to redevelop these capacities again, but I don't want to lock them in and make it a big deal that'll create a demand that'll prevent me from doing it. So what I would do was I would do it before I was ready. And I don't even know how I can say it in such a way where it makes sense, but I know everybody's probably like, that makes total sense. Um, I will do things sometimes before I have time to let my brain engage that I'm actually doing it, um, and just develop the habit. And it sounds really strange, because the thing is, I have planned it, and I understand it's what I'm going to do, but I have to almost trick myself into believing that I'm not actually doing it. Or, well, I'll just, it's a technique I actually used to use with PT clients. And when I was teaching my class, when I had strong mama moves, which was mum and baby exercise classes, for if there was a huge level of resistance to exercise, or finding it difficult to feel, quote unquote, motivated to do it, was just being able to arrive. So just being like, okay, well, if there is like a venue that you're going to, or maybe like, you can maybe see in the back and you can't see it. You can. The spin bike, just having it set up or whatever. Sometimes just having it there and sort of being like, okay, I've arrived, that's enough, and celebrating it, being like, okay, like I got to this part, I've got to the bike, I've got to the gym, I've put my shoes on, I have, whatever. Sometimes one of the most powerful things is being able to just celebrate that you got there. Maybe you don't have the energy, maybe you don't have the capacity to do it in that moment or that time, but taking whatever that smallest step is to sort of be like, okay, well, I got there. And then if you take the pressure off of having a set amount of things to do, um, you open yourself up then to take the pressure off, take the demand off, and allow yourself to under promise to then overachieve. So if you got there, you can decide whether, well, I could just go and do like 5 minutes, because the warm up should be a light break in intensity no matter what you're doing. You need to get your body ready, you need to get your muscles and your joints ready, you need to get your mind ready. And kind of building from there. So, it's like I used to call it like snacking on exercise. when I was teaching. I don't know whether I did it before Strong Mama Moves when I was personal training, but I probably did because I always have names for things. But that was back in 2018. But it's a good strategy to have because when you set really big goals, when you set really big action goals, even sometimes it's just so overwhelming and feels like such a big thing. It strips all the enjoyment out of it. But when you can sort of, and that's the key. The key is the celebrating. You have to draw massive, massive positive attention to the thing that you've did, no matter how small you think it is. You have to like go to town on celebrating yourself for it. Um, because it'll make a difference. It'll really help you in building that sort of positive relationship to whatever it is you're doing. Yeah. So and the 5 minute warm up. The 5 minute warm up thing I said yesterday, I link that as well back into your energy. So when I'm talking about, you've got high spoons, you got low spoons, or even so for me, trying to work out whether I am mentally or emotionally fatigued or whether I'm physically fatigued, because they both manifest physically. They both feel like physical exhaustion, and sometimes it can be tricky to figure out, okay, so is it emotional, mental fatigue, or is it physical fatigue? And by doing that light 5 minutes, it allows you to ascertain whether it is mental emotional. If it's mental emotional fatigue, you're probably going to notice that fog, that physical fog start to lift, and you maybe feel a little bit more like, oh, actually I'd like to keep on going. Whereas if you are physically fatigued, it will not lift and you will not benefit from doing the workout. But either way, you've done, and I wouldn't, in that case, I wouldn't even do the 5 minutes. In that sense, I've had times where I'm sort of like, is it physical? Is it mental, emotional? And then I'll start to do some of the movement, and you know, within a minute, 2 minutes, I'm like, no, I'm exhausted. I'll stop. I'm not going to keep going for the 5 minutes. And again, it's not an infallible process. It's it's a journey. It's like a relationship. A lot of the time, I'll sort of be like, I'm not teaching sort of like lifestyle, food and exercise sort of planning per se. It's more of like, relationship um coaching in a sense, because it's redeveloping that relationship to yourself, your habits, your beliefs, and really learning what that means to you rather than what you think you should do, because there's so much out there that's following set plans, and it's sucky to see so many people get disheartened when they feel like they failed at something that wasn't a plan that was actually designed for them. And sometimes that's even the same in the case of in personal training. I mean, I know that I've had trainers personally in the past that, they're great trainers, but they've programmed in relation to their capacity. Um, Particularly when I had someone that I was learning how to, what was I trying? I was trying to learn to do like um handstands and better pull-ups and press ups, but they were like a gymnast, like a trained and competitive gymnast, and their programming was massive. And at the time, I was a personal trainer in central London. I was teaching around 18 exercise classes a week, 8 to 12 of which would be spin classes, plus my own training, which was probably somewhere in the region between 5 and 10 hours a week, which I would have to sort of slot this into. Plus all the steps I was doing a day, because it wasn't always viable getting on the tube or on the bus to get between the gyms that I was at. So sometimes I was walking up to like 30,000 steps a day. So I didn't have capacity for these like massive, these massive plans. that for this trainer, this being their discipline, they could do lots of reps on it because for them it would be endurance work. It would be something that was really trained in. Whereas for me, it was in the strength and power ranges, and they're completely different programming. This is a little bit, this is getting into the sort of techie stuff, the energy systems and things. But for example, this is, some of the things that were programmed into this program for me were in the endurance range. So like, in your sort of 10 to 12 reps and stuff for things that I could maybe only do 2 or 3. And you need longer sets of recovery for power and for strength than you do for endurance. And the same with your days in between. So yeah, so this is essentially taking you on a journey, on story there. This is essentially why I am so passionate about teaching self-reflection in respect to planning rather than saying, oh, this is what you do this, because it's everybody's so different, and not even just in the sort of autistic and ADHD, um, the spectrum there, but even, thinking from neurotypical to neurodivergent, like everybody is different, has different capacities, has different drivers, internal and external motivators. And when you start working with those and looking at all of those pieces, um, it just makes it so much more enjoyable because it's yours. And that as well, it gives you that opportunity to look at everything you're already doing right. Because, just in these spaces, there's a lot of like, overhaul or changing everything or the excitement of doing something brand new and inadvertently throwing the baby out with the bathwater. When you could, particularly if you find that you don't naturally have a lot of, personal drive towards wanting to do movement, do exercise, you're going to benefit so much more with moving away from the thinking of there's so much to do, there's so much to change, and I'm not good at this, to okay, let's look at everything that I am good at, everything I am doing really well, the things that I really enjoy. It's incredibly rare that anybody would be 100% off the mark ever. So it's much more powerful when you can be like, okay, so who am I? What are my values? What am I already doing well? And what tweak is accessible to me? How can I make it? How can I make it something that I enjoy? Like if there's already a lot to do and there's already a lot of things taxing your nervous system, your energy, the last thing you want to do is have your lifestyle be something else that you have to do, when with a little bit of sort of time and reflection, you can instead choose something that adds to your life, adds to your energy, adds to your joy. So yeah, I think yeah, I went in relatively the direction that I planned on going today with this. But yeah, for me, Stimmy Walk. Stimmy Walk was the one today. That's what I wanted to do. I haven't been to the gym this year so far. I mean, obviously, like I have weights and stuff at home if I want to do it, but my energetic capacity and my desire just hasn't been predisposed to lifting. So for me, I'm enjoying my I'm enjoying my walks, and sometimes I'm enjoying yoga, but sometimes I'm just like just sticking, like checking in. What have I got today? If any niggles come up, I'm like, okay, well, I can work in on them and do the things I need to do there. But yeah, so for me, I love a stimmy walk, but it will definitely pay to think about what do you actually want to do, and look at ways of doing that, seeing what's available around locally or online, and yeah, starting with you know where you are with what you've got, and finding ways to make it as fun and as yours as possible. Right, I'm going to go and have some lunch now, but I can't tell you when I'll do the next video. It might be tomorrow, it might be next week, but I will return, and I hope you found it enjoyable. You can find more of my videos here on Substack. They all go across to YouTube as well, where I've got EFT tapping videos as well, and more things like diaries reflecting on exercise and movement and, my own personal journey. Yeah. So if you want to check that out, all the links are in my bio, and I will see you soon.